One of my favorite things to track inside of my bullet journal is actually Instagram followers. I've been doing it from the very first few pages of my very first bullet journal and all the way through. And we have to actually create a new one in my bullet journal because I just finished off the first one I created in the beginning of the year. Thanks for all those follows over on Instagram. I really appreciate it. So let's go and take a trip down memory lane, grab some inspiration from the past, and create a brand new Instagram tracker inside of our bullet journal today. Go ahead and start with my very first bullet journal. This started in April of 2017, and this one took me through December of 2017. I love looking through this bullet journal. It's my favorite one of all of them because it's my very first one. So this was my very first Instagram tracker. Create a little header here, and then I just tracked in increments of 50 as I went through. I put the date that I hit that, I highlighted the number, and created a color drop shadow on each one. As we got towards the end of the year here, and this one only taking me through the end of December, I create a little pop in here. I also love this one because I made a mistake in my very first pages of my very first bullet journal. So I put 200 down here twice. So I just add a little plus 50 and I was good to go here. This is the only one of this journal. Every journal is a little bit different. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there's two, all depends on the growth. This was the start of January through July of 2018. So as we continued through on this one, I went with a similar highlight to pull out the highlight of moving into that next increment. Still increments of 50, and I would just color in these rings as I went through. So this got me to January of 2018, and was at 900 followers, which is pretty awesome. Then I had to create a new one. This is probably one of my favorites to actually have done because I put a lot of thought into this one. Collaborate with a few other creators at the time to be like, what do you think about this? So this took me from 1,000 followers to 1,600. But my favorite part on this is the patterns and the hexagons and the way that this looks. It's what just, I love it so much. So the way that this one worked is I would have my major one, right? 1,000, 1,100. And for every 25 that I would get on top of that, I would fill in a pattern. It's weird, I think, to do increments of 25, but early on it's probably not, depending how fast you're growing. But I really wanted just to create this really cool looking pattern and track those small little increments here. This one then took us into my probably most unfavorite, honestly, of all of them. I just don't like the way this looks. I think my plants look like crap, but it took me through to get to 2,000. Great. And I was like, I'm moving on beyond this. I'm not interested in doing this anymore, and just kind of ended there. Moving into new notebooks and trying new things, I'm super inspired by what I'm doing and continue along with the hexagons here. I like the way this one looked visually, but again, it doesn't quite make sense because I think I tried to do similar to what I did in that past one with these like increments and patterns, but in a different way. More than anything, though, I do like the way the hexagons work and build out. It kind of looks like a board game to me. I also use this as multi-use and track some of my favorite hashtags I was using as well as I was continuing to grow on Instagram. That one took me to 3,000, which was really nice. Going through the rest of these, I just like to get a little bit of inspiration, create some little paper stacks here. And this one tracked to 8,000, which was fun. So a similar type approach. Every 100, I would note, color, and then got to a big one. So I like to create big milestones like this too. When you're at 7,000, you're trying to get towards this big number, thinking through how many you need to get there is fun. And then creating a pattern from there is great. This is another, I wanted to be like, I wanted this one to kind of be like origami and kind of fold through as we went. And I like this one as well because it took me through 2,000 additional followers from 8,000 to 10,000 from July until September, which is amazing. This is where everything takes a halt. So up until this point, I was tracking everything by 50. We did by 100. And then at this point, I got a little cocky and I thought, you know what, Mark, we're going to track by thousands because you're growing, man. You're making this happen. And in the entire span of this notebook, from November 2019 to July of 2020, I only grew by 1,000 followers, which is nothing to scoff at. It's pretty amazing. But I just really didn't love I didn't like that it didn't get filled out. And I really liked the way that this one looked. So, just things for me to think about as I was going through moving forward is I like those smaller increments and little wins. If I was growing by thousands each month or something like that, maybe this would be more exciting, but it definitely isn't exciting, but I do like the look and design of this one. It looks pretty neat. In my square bullet journal, I miss square bullet journals. I might be coming back sometime soon. I created a dual tracker because of the extra space that I had inside of this one, and this one being my very first square bullet journal. I decided to really utilize that space. I was tracking YouTube as I was trying to get the 4,000 subscribers. I was also tracking my watch times because I was trying to get into the partner program. So a lot of cool things happening here. And then this was just like this small little interconnected, kind of reminded me of like under a microscope look. So this was like, okay, that thousands didn't work out for me very well. So now I'm going to track even smaller increments. And so I did. So inside of here, we did like 12.2 thousand and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 smaller ones. So it was like for every 10 new followers I was getting, I was filling this out to get to the next one. It's silly to go that small, but I swung like a pendulum and I was like, oh, much smaller increments. But I do like the way it looked. It looked pretty neat as it was going through. And then I followed up with kind of a replica of what I had done originally, trying to relive that again, much bigger because there's a lot more space inside of this square one. So you'll see as that kind of follows through there on this. The Galaxy Drip. I love this notebook. I love the design. It's one of my favorites. So inside of this one is the first time that I used my own stamps. So at this point, 2021-ish, I was getting into making my own stamps and carving my own stamps. And I thought, well, we're going to do that. We're going to start using these inside of here. So I created one here with like a paper clip holding on to a Polaroid and created these tracking by hundreds as well, taking from 16.7 to 17.2, which was nice, but you know, that moved kind of quickly, which it's fine, not mad at it. And then more of my own personalized stamps that I made, like a little like paper clip looking thing on a piece of paper, tracking through here as we were making our way until the end of this notebook, because this one took us until, I can't tell, December. Took us until December. So we made it to November, didn't have any extra growth here, and then moved into our next journal. And then this is my last bullet journal. So use that stamp again over here with the clips, taking through that growth. Also was doing the YouTube tracker over here. I love the way this looked. Got to 10,000 subscribers and I was so incredibly happy. So this one was pretty simple. I didn't color anything in. I didn't do anything else. I just put the date that I hit that and kept it kind of minimal. And then that brings us to our current bullet journal. So I just finished up this tracker the other day. You see, as I continue using similar themes throughout, I actually got a stamp. I didn't make the stamp, but it looks like a Polaroid or like a Instagram photo here. And so I just kind of did the same thing, carrying along with that, figuring out, okay, coloring it in. When I hit the date, I write the date up here when I've made it. And then we are at the end of February now at 22.7 and we're all filled up. So now we need a new tracker, and that's what we're going to do today. So you saw all the different ones that I've done and those inspirations and how we created them. And I really love using color with these, as weird as it is, because I don't always use a lot of color, but I love using my own personal stamps too. So what we're going to do today, I have some ideas. I'm going to mix two of my favorite things that I'm doing right now together. One of them is going to be using the ink blending. So we're going to be using distressed oxide. I had my daughters pick these two colors out. I have like over 10 now, and I was like, pick out two colors, and they were like, these two, and I'm like, oh, okay. Dried marigold and tea dye, which I like them, but I was hoping for something a bit brighter, but since they picked, they know what's going on. And then I also made this hexagon stencil using my Cricut cutter. Really like the way that it looked. And then also, I was just talking about using my own stamps. I have this one, and we've used this one before for trackers and things like that, but it is just kind of like a talk bubble with this extra thick drop shadow. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go ahead and use the ink blending and do every other down the page, and we're going to blend in this hexagon shape, carrying along kind of a tribute to the earlier ones, and then using my own personal stamp, we'll be stamping over top of that. So what you're going to get is a color behind it with this black ink on top, and then I'll be using one of these graphite metallic acryligraphs from Archer and Olive to write in the numbers as we go through. So what I've done on here is I've already marked everything out on pencil on how many spaces that I need. Now to get that space, I kind of use my stamp to do that and just take a look real quick at like how much space is that going to take up. Anytime I'm using stamps or other things like that, I kind of use them as my base measurement and then build everything around that. Now this is going to be split into two different columns. So in the bullet journal edition too, they actually have these little indicators on here that you can see down here for half. So I can easily pick, okay, so take about half that page, and then I'm going to go ahead and build this out. And it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to be 7 squares down for each one. So then all I did was just count down from there. And that way it gives me a little bit of a visual of how I want to add these in here. And it should fill up pretty good. We'll be starting at 22.8, 9, 23, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this should take me to 23,700 if I'm doing that math right. 8. If you're interested in learning more about Distress Oxide, I actually have a video that you can check out that talks about how to use Distress Oxide inside of your bullet journal. And all these materials that we're using as well will be over on my Amazon shop, which is amazon.com/shop/menwhobullet. You can check all of those out. So Distress Oxide is a mix of dye and ink, and so it washes off pretty good with water. So you don't have to just use these for one color, even though it does kind of dye the bristles just a little bit, totally fine. You wash it off and you're good to go. Let's go ahead and start with these. I'm going to open them up and let's go ahead and have some fun. So I'll go ahead and start with this one over here first. So we're going to just take our blending brush. We're going to blend it on top of the ink pad, get that color on there. Then I'm going to go ahead and line this up, make sure that I'm somewhat in the center of these. It doesn't have to be perfect. Because I'm moving so quickly, I'm not going to tape these down, and I also gave myself plenty of space on these too, since I'm using them to create the space that I need. All right, honestly, I think I messed myself up there. I just realized that the caps were on the two different colors I thought I was using, but it is what it is. Because it's like, they don't look totally different to me. And then I realized that I think I used the same color twice here. But then I found my way and found my groove, and we ended up with what we have. So I'm going to set these off to the side. Like I said, I can just rinse these off with some water and they'll be clean and ready to go once the brush is air dry to use with a different color. Now for the next part. So we're going to be using this stamp here. I'm going to be using VersaFine ink for this. It's one of my favorite inks to use. It also isn't super heavy, but it does the job. And I'm going to be stamping each one of these over top of the hexagons here. And then we'll be filling it in with all of the numbers in just a second. All right, so as fun as ink can be, we have a few little smudges around. We'll clean those up in just a minute, but I'm just gonna give this a second to dry. We're using ink on ink. What I do love though is that it's not going to bleed through the pages here. So even though this is 120 GSM paper, it's not super thick. Both the blending and the VersaFine ink sit on here really nice. So you don't have to worry about having ultra thick pages to make something like this work. While we're waiting for this ink to dry, I can still see it's a little bit wet in some spots. I'm going to come in and I'm actually just going to clean up some of these small little ink prints around here. So what I have here is a Tombow. It's called a mono sand eraser. And this is great, just an extra tool to have if you want to get rid of anything extra that might happen. What you can do is just erase over top of any of the ink smudges that you might have, and it will get rid of them for you. I like to only use this sparingly because it does remove kind of like the top layer of your page and that paper there to get rid of that ink. And then I'll also go through and just clean up some of these pencil lines real quick, and then we'll go ahead and start with our numbers. All right, and there we go. We have our new tracker set up for Instagram using our distressed inks and our custom-made ink, and loving the way this one's looking. Can't wait to start using it. I have so much fun creating these inside of my bullet journal. As you saw, we have so many different ideas that we come up with time and time again, but those hexagons always win. I just love the look of that shape, and mixing it with things like ink and even my own custom-made stamps. It was super fun, and I love doing these. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. Let me know what kind of things you track inside of your bullet journal. Are you tracking social media, health, exercise, or just general tasks? I'd love to get your ideas. Thank you so much for checking out today's video as always, and I'll talk to you next time. Happy planning.